It's not going to be easy. I'm going to present the European Union Circular Economy Experiment. And this project was initiated when I started to become interested in alternative economic models that could help sustain a growth that would be sustainable on the long term. Because as a global studies major with an environmental science and policy minor, we're used to studying global warming impacts on our environment. And it's always very negative and very drowning. COVID-19, for example, is one of the stressors that influenced the pandemic to reach such a large scale. So I decided to be more solution-oriented and seek innovative economic approaches to our current economic system. And the circular economy is a tool that has been used in the European Union to implement a sustainable growth over the last 2 decades. And this is the first country or region that has implemented the strategy as a national plan. So I wanted to investigate how and to what extent the circular economy experiment in the European Union was proven to be a successful tool to fight global warming. And to do so, I'm going to investigate the circular economy framework. I also did a historical overview of circular economy emergence and political implementation in the European Union. And lastly, I am going to assess the policy outcomes of such a strategy in the European Union and whether it's successful at fighting global warming. The circular economy is a new systemic vision of our current economy, and it aims to decouple economic growth from environmental damage. What that means is that it tries to distinguish our income generation and our GDP from any negative externalities, such as greenhouse gas emissions or environmental degradation that can happen during the extraction process. The model that you can see on this PowerPoint, it was done by the MacArthur Institute, which promotes the circular economy on a global scale since 2008. And what it does, it shows that the circular economy is an industrial system that is restorative by design. On one side, it shows the biological cycle, which with all the biological nutrients that flow into the industrial system, but are able to reintegrate the biosphere. And on the other side, it has the technical cycle, which aims to be recycled and reused and not enter the biosphere. And the way that this works is that it's a closed-looped economy that ends to ideally not generate any waste. And so in that way, it enables our economy to reduce its greenhouse gases. In fact, it has multiple environmental benefits that happen at each stage process of the chain production. From the extraction to the production to the consumption to the waste. What it does is that it increases carbon storage in our soils by effective land management uses. In the production level, it reduces greenhouse gas emissions by having flows of material and energies between economic actors happen, and by doing so, limit external waste that usually happens in our current industries. At the consumption level, it uses what we call eco designs and other tactics and management tactics to increase the lifespan of products and enable them to re-enter either the biosphere or to be recycled, upcycled, and reused. Ultimately, there shouldn't be any waste in an ideal situation in a circular economy, but what it does with the waste that is generated is that it restreams it into a primary product, for example, for industries to use to make other products, or it recycles them to a certain degree, a certain level, depending on the material that is the waste. So the circular economy has been an international strategic plan that the European Union has tried to focus on and wants to be a leader, a global leader. This is a definition of the European Commission that shows the ambition of the European Union to meet these targets. So in a circular economy, the value of products and materials is maintained for as long as possible. Waste and resource use are minimized, and when a product reaches the end of its life, it is used again to create further value. This can bring major economic benefits, contributing to innovation, growth, and job creation. So with this definition, we can see that in Europe, circular economy ambitions were first implemented to create economic growth. It wasn't for environmental factors. In fact, after the 2008 financial crisis in the European Union, new solutions and innovative solutions and approaches to the economy had to be put in place. And circular economy was an experiment that was implemented as a result. So we're going to look right now at what were the founding fathers of circular economy in the European Union and how it came about to be a national strategic plan, an intra-governmental strategic plan. So there are three big texts in the European history that kind of were the founders of circular economy concepts. The potential of substituting manpower for energy by Stahl and Rede was a proposal that was a report that was given to the circular economy, to the European Commission in 1972. So it was very early on. And what it did is that it aimed at increasing the lifespan of materials in the industrial process in order to make our economy more efficient. It didn't mention the word circular economy, but just closed loop system. The limits of growth by the Meadows was the first big research project that used analytical tools with computer models. In the 70s, there was a huge development of these computer tools in order to be able to diagram complicated energy flows and material flows that the Meadows used to create a closed loop system and show how our current economic model is too tied to our natural resources, and that with a population growth that would reach 9 billion by 2050, the current economic model could not function on the long term. It would shoot and collapse, as they would say. The third text that was very influential was The Economics of Natural Resources and the Environment. This was the first text that actually talked about circular economy. It was the first text that coined the term circular economy. And what it did, it was talk about, in particular, the regenerative capacity of our natural environment and how we had to take that into account when we were extracting and producing goods. We couldn't always look for other location and more to extract produce. Rather, we would have to sustain our land and our management practices of our land to be able to sustain our growth on the long term. So circular economy in the European Union was first implemented through waste regulation. So the European Union was created in 1957, more or less, depending if it's the ECC or the actual current European Union. But it was much later that a framework directive was implemented to harmonize waste management approaches, and that was in 1975. And after 1975, in the 80s and 90s, with globalization and a rise in population, there was a lot of waste and people didn't know what to do with it. And there started to be a rise in environmental consciousness of what can we do with all this waste? What should we do with all this waste? And so the environmental movement at this point influenced policies in the European Union to incorporate recycling and ecological management practices. So we have in 91 the Council Directive on Hazardous Waste, that uniform definition of hazardous waste, the Waste Shipment Regulation in 93 that supervised and controlled waste shipment within, into, and out of the European Union, and stopped putting the burden of circular economy on developing country. And then the updated waste directive that incorporated recycling, reuse, and upcycling definitions within the regulations. And so these are the circular economy political strategies in the European Union that are the most, that use circular economy as a single strategy. The first political appearance of circular economy was in the Europe 2020 objective that aimed for a strategy for smart, sustainable, and inclusive growth. And what it did mainly, it was focused on resource efficiency. The Circular Economy Plan of 2015 used the background of waste policies set in the 90s to stimulate a transition towards circular economy. And then in the Circular Economy Action Plan of 2018 actually revamped the circular economy by legally binding member states to attain certain emission targets and certain waste targets. It also implemented a monitoring framework that would be able to be used to see whether circular economy was being successful or not. So as we can see, the world is now only 8.6% circular. And this gap is widening, especially because there is an increase in resource extraction, and that people are not necessarily looking towards circular economy as a solution to reduce greenhouse gases. In fact, in 2018, the world was 9% circular. So we see that there's a decrease in circularity in our global economy. On another hand, we have the European Union that is 12% circular. And this is mainly due to the regulations that we've seen. This is a diagram that shows the flows and energies divided by certain sectors in the European Union. As you can see, there is a certain amount of circularity that has enabled the European Union to have a better economic competitiveness and reduce its greenhouse gas emissions.
Philo, we're going to have to stop you there so that we can move on to the next presentation. But before we do that, I'd like to invite your mentor, Peter Beck, to say a few words. And audience, if you have questions, you can send them directly to me via the chat, and I will get those both to Dr. Beck and to Philo.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd just like to say that it's been such a pleasure working with you and having you in classes. And I just wish you had started taking some ENSP classes a little earlier. And I'd also just like to tell the public that she's in France now. Everything she's done at St. Ed's has been in a second language in an unfamiliar educational system. And so it's just really impressive, everything that you've done.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry this presentation wasn't as good as I planned it. And
it was wonderful, Philo. You did a great job. So a collective round of applause coming your way, and please pop into the chat window and I'll screenshot you all these lovely, great jobs and congratulations that are coming from your friends and colleagues and from the audience. Okay. If you guys will give us just 1 minute, we're going to do a little bit of behind the scenes changing here and we'll get on with our next